For over 80 years, the publishers of Detective Comics, more famously known as DC Comics, have been able to captivate their audience in which they see the ultimate possibilities of fantasy, superheroes, supervillains, and everything in between. Not only in books themselves, but on the big screen. And though it might be subjectable, the way DC projects their animated films can really reflect a lot better to how the comics portray themselves. Today we take a stroll into Gotham. Today we fly to Krypton, as there may be a Joker hiding in the midst. And today we break down our top 5 DC animated movies. This is a Comic Talkers production, and you are listening to Just for Flicks. What's going on, everybody? It's me, your favorite superhero, Patty B. With me, or I should say, screw that. And today we are breaking down our top 5 DC animated movies. With me today, as always, is Mr. B Dog, Mr. Brandon. What's going on? The Brainiac himself. How we doing today on this
I don't like being
glorious?
called Brainiac, especially with me being a DC fan. Brainiac is not the villain I go to. That's the one I would always want to
Well,
kill.
I was just trying to make some DC puns, okay?
Yeah, I know, I know. I just love how you say fly to Krypton when Krypton's destroyed.
Well,
And
we,
it's
well,
like,
I'm not seeing much here. What am I supposed to be looking for? That top or that on the
there's
right?
the Joker. For this episode, for anybody who does not know, like we said, we're comic talkers. I have one of my co-hosts with me from the Comic Talker podcast. You know him as Hillbilly Comics. Please welcome back Bryce. Bryce, how are you doing?
welcome.
How's it going?
I talked to Bryce about this right away, and Bryce was like, "Let's do it. Like, I'm down. We're gonna get this done. It's gonna be unique because these are our personal lists, so everybody's gonna have different movies they choose. But I'm gonna put it out there, Pat, if you don't mind. What's your guys' take when it comes to DC? Should they stick with live action, or should they just focus on animation? Let's go to
Pat,
Bryce.
you want to take this one first?
Oh, well, I was just gonna say, I think that's subjective for a lot of people, right? Because I feel like the animated movies just portray a little bit different than how the live action ones do, right? I mean, you also have, I feel like actors reflect differently live action wise than they do animation, if that makes sense. Because I mean, you're only hearing their voice, but if you're seeing like Christian Bale, for example, as Batman, right? He reflects how Batman is in real life, but as we see it in the animated version, just someone voicing it like Kevin Conroy. You know, I think I think it's just a little bit different, but I like them both personally. So
Is that what I do? What was it? Not the mass who defines me. It's what I do. And all right,
oh.
what about you, Bryce?
What shape? Uh, really, John?
That's a really good Christian Bale Batman right there.
Or, as he said in The Dark Knight Returns, anyway.
Rachel.
Uh, oh man, I got Dark Knight voices for days. Like, don't
Dude.
be careful if I bring out my Joker or Bane. Like, I no. But as far as live action versus animated, I'm with Pat. I like them both. I do think that DC kind of has an untapped potential for live action, especially looking at some projects that they've released recently. Mainly Superman and Lois.
Yeah.
So my whole this or that debate that I get into isn't always necessarily live action versus animated. It's TV versus movies.
Yeah.
Because even then, as much as I love the animated movies, I don't think when you have something that is originally told in serialized storytelling, that it is ever going to translate as well to a feature length production as it could to a serialized TV show. Like all my favorite comic book properties, all my favorite adaptations are TV shows. So as far as whether I prefer DC to do live action or animated, I say do whatever is best for the story. Bring in quality filmmakers, bring in a quality crew and a quality cast, that you think can best bring the story that you're trying to tell in the way that you're trying to tell it to life.
You bring up a good point with the whole question. It's not so much animation or live action, but if it's shows or movies, because it's a whole big thing right now too. And as Star Wars fans too, we see that now with the shows. The shows have been outdoing the movies, and but it also allows you to expand on the story. It depends on the comic you're covering. It depends on, like I say, or like you just said too. It's the whole thing of we should look at that more. I do think doing movies sometimes lessens that story down. But going back to what we're doing, we're going to be going over our top 5 DC animated films. Member fans, these are our personal lists. So drop in the comments what your top 5 DC animated films are. But we are going to turn it over to Bryce. Bryce is going to start this off for us with his number 5.
Okay, so my number 5, and this kind of hurt putting it down this low because it does feature my favorite DC character and my favorite DC mantle the most. But at number 5, I've got Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox.
Okay.
What the 2023 Flash movie should have been. Was it 2023 or 2022 that came out? Was it 23?
2023.
And see, I was excited for that movie when it was
You were like out of all
because
three of
I'm
us.
like, it's a Flash movie. We're finally getting a Flash movie. I've been waiting years for this. And on the bright side, I still have Flashpoint Paradox. No, honestly, uh, this was the movie that first introduced me to the Flashpoint story. I did see this movie before I read that story, and I do think that for the most part, it translated really well. I thought it's one of the better comic accurate Barry Allens that we've gotten. And the way that they portrayed Thomas Wayne's Batman, I thought was the best possible scenario in
So,
that.
so I do have a question for you though, because the deaths of the Reverse Flash are two different. So the comic is different than what the movie shows. Do you prefer the gunshot or the sword being stabbed through him? I know that's a difficult one too, because we
It
both like
is. So I'm gonna answer that by saying kind of what I like about both of them first.
Okay.
I both like and hate. I both like Barry being the one to do it with the. Was it Barry that did it with the sword? It's been a while.
It was still Batman.
It was still Batman.
Batman did both.
Well, in that case, then, because again, it's been a while since I've read the comic.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that correction.
No
It's
worries.
been a while since I've read the comic, but knowing that now, or being reminded of that now, I'm gonna have to go with the gunshot solely because that is like the final moment of separation between Thomas and Bruce.
Yeah.
And I think that was just a really powerful moment overall. Seeing for Barry to really see something that he never thought he would see,
Mm-hmm.
which is somebody in a bat suit using a gun to mortally wound somebody.
Right.
So yeah, I gotta go with the gunshot.
Okay. What was it? I know we've talked about it too, but like I always love like the whole scenario of what if Barry did save his mom?
Yeah.
I think, and it did make my honorables. It was my first one off my list. It was a hard one to leave off because I did the same thing. I watched the movie before I read the comic, and reading the comics, there's so much more intrigue with it that Joker is Martha Wayne. It's not just some, it's totally different. And Thomas Wayne becomes Batman. Bruce, Aquaman and Wonder Woman are at war with each other. It's
Cyborg being a government sanctioned hero.
And Superman is captured by the government. Like one of my favorite parts of the movie too is Grifter and Batman scene, because I do like Grifter from the Wildcats. So it was fun to see him and then Grifter gets shot. I'm like, of course.
I like the Shazam family aspect too.
Yeah, I like that all 7 of them have to combine to make Shazam, not just
not just Billy.
Yeah. But it's a unique concept, and I think it was really well thought out. And to have Barry in the central of it all, it actually was a really great story. Um, no, that's a great pick, Price. But I am going to another one that focuses around Barry, but not in the way you think. It's a recent one. It's the only one I have recent on my list. And other than the Justice League, Bryce, you know me enough. What other team do I like when it comes to DC Comics?
The JSA.
JSA. So I am going with Justice Society World War II. And I love this film.
That's a great one.
When this film was announced, I was just like, I'm buying it. I don't care. I want to get this. And I love teams. I love World War II. Maxes them both together. Barry is runs so fast she's sent back in time pretty much and goes back to World War II. And on this, the only thing I feel like this team really neglected on was Jay. And it stinks because Jay is one of the founding members. And they kind of just like sidelined him a little bit, and it was because of Barry. And it's like, Jay is like the like I would look at him as the founder. Like he's one of the main three, but to me, he is the father figure. He's the one that's willing to take on and teach kids, along with Wildcat. And this team, so this is the team. Wonder Woman's on the team. That was my other big problem because we know back in World War II time frame when this comic was coming out, Wonder Woman wasn't really a member of the
I
team.
was gonna say
She was
she was, but she wasn't, and that
she
is
was
very much a an of the time kind of decision.
right. And granted, I agree. At this point, Wonder Woman's coming off popularity with both movies that's come out, and I agree with
Right.
that. And I did like the little Latinas the um language barrier there. I did enjoy that. I thought that was really well done. Our Man, which I agreed with that. Black Canary, I was fine with, and Hawkman and Superman was kind of in the movie too. But if you love World War II, this is a great film for you, and because it's a great action-packed World War II film.
Mhm.
Aquaman's kind of one of the main adversaries where we find out is brainwashed. And it's just a fun little tale. The animation, this was kind of one of the first times I watched that type of animation and thought it was really well done. Um, I did not like the Superman movie that came out before, so I was kind of skeptical when it came to the animation. But I thought it was really well done. They set it in World War II really well. It just was a great film, and it's really the first time the Justice Society was really highlighted in an animated property other than in the Justice League cartoon. But they could not go by the names that they had. It was the Justice Guild, not the Justice Society.
Young Justice started to highlight some JSA members a little bit.
Well, it's just like when you get to Justice League Unlimited, there are JSA members,
Yeah.
but there are no mention of anything with the JSA. It's I think what was it, Star Spangled Girl or Star Girls in there, Stripes in there. There's quite a few. Hawkman is in it. There's quite a few people, but it's not really highlighted as their Justice Society. They are Justice League, and it's kind of a downgrade, I think, a little bit because of how iconic the JSA is, because it is the first comic book team ever in comics. So to see that, it just hurts, but I was glad to choose that. That was one I was like, I got to put that in there somehow. But when I looked at the rest of my movies, like, it's not going above any of the other movies on my list. So,
Yeah.
so but Pat, let's go to you. What's your number five?
My number five uh, was one of the first DC comic book movies I was watching, or animated movies I was watching leading up to this, and it really kind of captured my attention. It's one of my favorite superheroes. It's Superman Unbound from 2013.
Go.
Um, I
I've
really
actually not seen that one.
I really like the intro sequence on this with Lois Lane being held captive. Just the fighting scenes are really good in this movie. I don't want to mispronounce his name, but is it Matt Bomer who play? Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Yeah.
The
I think
Superman.
so. The guy from White Collar?
What's
Yes,
that?
it
The guy
is.
from White Collar?
Yes,
Sure.
yes,
Is
it
that the
is.
guy from White
Yes.
Collar?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. I said
Um,
yes.
Molly
Oh, I
Molly
didn't hear you.
Quinn as
Sorry.
Kara Zor-El,
Yeah.
but no, and this movie is based on the comic book Superman Brainiac. It looks like, which Another thing I noticed watching this movie is the animation is a lot more clear than some movies. The way the lines are just drawn on it, it looks good. It looks clean. It makes it its own movie, in my opinion. Um, Another one I wanted to get to was Diedrich Bader playing Steve Lombard, that's just one of my favorite characters. He's like this sleazy publisher guy, scumbag. I love Diedrich Bader's voice. He really makes it, and I know he's in multiple DC movies,
Oh
um,
yeah.
but I love Diedrich Bader. I mean, I think of him from Office Space or the Drew Carey Show, but um, yeah, no, Superman Unbound is like I said, it made my five. Like I said, the battle scene at the end with the drones and everything, that's pretty cool. Um, but like I said, it's a good movie all through all. Check it out for the animation alone. I love the animation on it. So
That movie alone, I love Brainiac's design. I
yeah,
thought the way they designed Brainiac in that film was so well done,
hmm
and I love the fight between him and Brainiac at the very end in the Merc in the mud pond because it threw Brainiac all off. It was like the funniest thing. You see Brainiac, and he's so Bryce, you know enough. Brainiac is so calculative. Like he's
Oh
all
yeah.
97% success rate, all this. And you see him in that water and he doesn't know how to react. It's like
Well,
the first time.
he was in a lot of in most continuities, he is like the super intelligence of Krypton.
Right.
So yeah, no, he is all logic, all numbers. It's like if Spock's Vulcan half was amped up to 11. So my
Right.
number 4, this is going to be my only movie that is tied to any sort of series that DC did, but it's not a DC AU movie.
Right.
And that is Teen Titans Trouble in Tokyo.
Yep. I figured that was gonna come on your list somehow, some way. I knew you would.
Yep. So the Teen Titans animated series, where a lot of people born in the people grew up in the 90s, had Batman the animated series, Superman the animated series. I grew up in the 2000s. So Teen Titans was the show from DC for me. Even more so than Justice League Unlimited. Like Teen Titans was my show. And so I didn't see the movie until I did a rewatch of the show like years later, like probably a decade later. But it felt like such a nice conclusion to a show that I think got canceled far too soon.
I agree with you. Teen Titans was canceled so quickly. I feel like there's so much more they could have done.
I
And
Yeah, and Trouble in Tokyo at least kind of did a little bit to rectify that.
yeah,
I think I got all the characters right as usual. Um, a lot of fun, a lot of like great sequences with obviously Robin and Starfire. Beast Boy kind of having his own side adventure was a blast to see. It's one of those, is it filled with nostalgia for me because of the show? Absolutely. But I would go back and watch that in a heartbeat. It is probably the movie on this list. There's one movie on this list that I will probably rewatch more than this one, but it's still up there.
all right. I'll jump to my number 4. It's my only two-parter on my list, and I am going with both films because they have released it as one big movie. My first Batman film, The Dark Knight Returns.
I don't know
This,
why I thought you were gonna go with the Long Halloween.
no, and I'll explain that because like I said in the beginning, I understand there has to be some sacrifices when it comes to the movies. That took a lot out of that context, out of
That
that
is fair.
film, out of that comic, and even the major points were even put into the movie, and it was like, why? Like, this story is something so critiqued. When you look at the Long Halloween in the comic, it's so like meticulous. Like you have to pay attention to things. In the movie, they change it so much that you just go, I don't care anymore.
Don't care.
And literally
Yeah,
that second
no,
part when
fair
it came
enough.
out, I watched like the first 30 minutes and I went, no, I won't watch this. And I stopped. and I was so pissed with it. But The Dark Knight Returns, based off probably one of the best comics ever written, The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. Um, this is just a great story. Batman's been retired at this point for 8 years, and he comes back, um, take on the mutants, which the mutants were pretty much like a new breed of criminal. Like they kill mercilessly. Like they don't give a crap about anybody. They were just coming out there, just murder people like nothing. The voice cast is kind of interesting though for this, and this is why I said it's Peter Weller, RoboCop himself, is Batman. This is what made it interesting because I was like, when you hear this tonight, I'm the law. I'm like, oh, no, there's the robot cop, you know. But um, his fight with the mutants is amazing. It's really well done. The Joker fight with him is very dark. Joker does die at the end of the fight. Um, it's a very brutal fight between those two, and of course, this is where you get the iconic who would win in a fight, Batman or Superman, because this is the iconic fight. And one of my favorite things I love about the film is the score. The score is so well done by Christopher Drake, which probably is not going to be the only time I talk about Christopher Drake because he does a lot of the scores for the animated movies. And he's so well done in this. One of my favorite, of course, is during the Batman Superman fight. And the song goes, I want you to remember the one man who beat you. And that is like the most iconic line to me because I always love when he has Clark sitting there and he's just like holding on to him, like, I want you to remember the one man who beat you. And then he dies from a heart attack. And we find out he really did it. But it's a fun story. But here's a good one for you, Pat. Who do you think would win in a fight in your eyes, Batman or Superman?
Superman for sure.
Why is that?
Oh, just he's superhuman. He's just gonna destroy shit.
Okay, I'll save my comments to the next movie because
No,
there's a
I mean, like,
there's
come
a
on now.
reason. There's a
I just
reason
don't.
why I think. Oh, what was it? My next movie shows why Batman can outsmart Superman.
I was gonna say I might save my Batman versus Superman comments for my number 2 movie.
Okay.
I mean, for me, to be honest though, just for me, like, I feel like it shouldn't be up for debate. It's Superman.
All right.
I
We'll
don't
we'll
know.
keep our comments.
That's fair.
We'll keep our comments.
No, and I mean I agree. I agree with Pat. I
It's
think
not.
Superman does take it,
Yeah,
but
you guys are a lot more educated between those two characters as well. I'm seeing it from a movie perspective and what I've seen.
Agreed. And in
I've
that case, when you really have the context put in front of you, it should be no competition.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there is a competition.
Brandon, there's a comic book debate. Who cares about context?
Well, I know my number four is gonna probably disappoint Brandon a little bit. I know you're not a huge fan of this movie, but it's gonna be Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker.
I never
Someone,
said I'm not a big fan of it. It just wouldn't make my list.
I,
I just,
I
I
think it's classic. It's a classic meeting with Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, right? Their characters as Batman and the Joker. Uh, I just love the animation in this too. This is very nostalgic for me as a kid. I remember when this came out. I remember when this movie, the trailer for the movie was on VHS as I watched, and like coming soon on VHS. Uh, but I love how it's also a futuristic take on Batman, right? On the story of Batman. How Joker's an old man and he comes into the Joker's gang, right? That was inspired by him, right? But they don't really want anything to do with them. I know there was one scene in particular in this movie where it kind of reflects a lot on who the Joker is, how someone's not a fan of him and they're trying to stand up to him, and then he plays mind games with them. It's kind of like what we see, in other movies with the Joker, and it's classic Joker in my opinion. I like it. I thought it was kind of weird how Harley Quinn is a grandmother in this.
yeah. So that, well, remember the DD twins. That
Yes.
I love the DD twins. I don't care. I love old woman Harley because Harley is just like no. But we know then at this point she moved on from the Joker. So there's some happiness for her in the future, but I think why I like that movie too, and that's probably my favorite Joker film,
Mhm.
is because we see how smart the Joker truly is.
Yeah.
We don't see him as the chaotic, oh, I'm just here to cause chaos. No, he's pretty smart. And the fact being how he tortured Tim Drake. And
Mhm.
then he has that little mole in the back that makes him activate, that he
Mhm.
becomes the Joker. So really just screw
Well,
with
wouldn't you say would you say this too? And I'll go to portray to a live action reference on this. Would you say that Heath Ledger's Joker is smart, right? He's not very he is chaotic, but he has a smart way of doing it.
he's a tactile, like he's a very tactical Joker.
Yes, got it.
That I will agree with that.
I
I'll
mean,
just,
I'm just like comparing them both,
but
as far as that goes.
yeah, like he's a very tactical Joker. And I think every Joker, it's like we said, every Joker that's displayed is very different.
Hmm.
You, I think this is the first time when it comes to Mark Hamill's version that you really see him truly how smart truly he can be. But we see throughout his series that he's very maniacal. My favorite episode still from the Batman series is Joker's favorite, and how he gets into a road rage incident and then remembers the guy, and then a year later, after the guy goes into witness protection program, finds him and goes, "Remember that favor you told me you do for me? Today's the day," and like uses him. But Joker in that, because it's a continuation to that series. I just like him with how he, and it's sad because of who he outsmarts, and that's Tim Drake. And because Tim Drake is supposed to be the smartest Robin, and Joker pretty much planted something on him that can manipulate him to become the Joker. So
Yeah.
it's just fun.
I actually have another hot take that's somewhat associated with that movie. I prefer Terry McGinnis as a character over Bruce Wayne.
Absolutely,
Hmm.
I agree with you there.
I think Terry McGinnis is not only a phenomenal addition to the Batman mythos, but just the DC mythos as a whole. And that movie is one of the better examples of that.
Well,
Well, they say at the end too, they kind of leave it where Bruce is kind of okay with Terry taking the reins as Batman, right?
well, you got to remember too. So when it comes to Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis, and they confirm this, is actually kind of like I wouldn't say a clone, but he is Bruce's son. And we find that out in the Justice League show. In a show called Epilogue, we find out that Terry's dad, who dies in the series, is not truly his dad. And we find out he actually has the DNA of Bruce Wayne.
Oh
So
wow.
Bruce did that to
Damn
make
it,
sure there was
Bruce.
always a Batman. And Terry, it's a great story when he first comes in the series because he helped fight off some of the gang members. And Bruce's like, no, I don't want no Batman. I don't want nothing. And then all of a sudden, okay, you're Batman. I see. I love Ace in that movie. Ace the Hound in that movie makes me laugh every time he shows up on screen because he hates Terry, and then he grows to actually love Terry later on. I just love how he takes down the Joker afterwards and makes me laugh.
I didn't realize that Henry Rollins was in this movie from the Misfits, the band. Henry Rollins plays Benjamin Knox. Like that's just a. I love how that's one thing I noticed when I was looking and doing the research for these movies for my list is how stacked are some of the the casts are in these, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
we got Luke Skywalker in this movie.
Yeah,
Like it's crazy to think, man. Like it's you don't think about it until you watch them, and then you actually hear their voices, some of their voices, especially But
it's
you know,
Something's always funny to me about Mark Hamill's Joker specifically. Again, I didn't grow up on Batman the Animated Series. I actually went back later and watched some episodes. You know who else Mark Hamill voiced that he took heavy inspiration from his Joker for this particular voice?
hmm,
Firelord Ozai in Avatar: The Last Airbender.
okay.
If you listen to some of the scenes, specifically like towards the end, like in the finale.
Mhm.
Like you can hear him. Like I think it was he said something like "in my world," and it just like Joker fully comes out.
Something tangent quick. The Justice League action show. You guys ever watch that show? There's an episode literally with Mark Hamill as himself, the Joker, voiced by Mark Hamill, and the Trickster, voiced by Mark.
Voiced by Mark Hamill. That's hysterical.
And it's like the funny. And then at the end, you get Solomon Grundy in the episode. And Solomon Grundy's also voiced by Mark Hamill.
Is it
It's
like the Nutty Professor of animated?
Who does he think he is? Seth MacFarlane?
Yeah, or Trey Parker and Matt Stone.
Yeah.
like I think it was the Joker and the Trickster kidnapped Mark Hamill, and they were going on like like a whole trip thing trying to get money. It was just it's like the funniest thing you'll ever see in your life. It made me laugh so hard for a kid show to make you laugh, and it just is like my mom's like, "Why are you laughing?" That's Mark Hamill like 4 different times.
Yeah.
But
Does he at least try to? He makes the voices different, right?
Yeah.
there's a little difference, but yeah, the Trickster and Joker are close. Like you
Yeah.
can
Joker
hear
and
it.
Trickster are pretty close.
Well, I mean,
Like
the names are pretty close.
the I love the Justice League cartoon where they're supposed to do the Flash Museum. And you see Trickster in a bar. He's like, they didn't like my idea, and he goes, "Well, if you go turn yourself in, I'll come by and play a game of chess with you." And he's like, "You did it again, Flash!" And he's like,
Not me again, Flash. Yeah.
"But all right, Bryce, let's go to your number 3."
So speaking of stacked voice casts, my number 3 is the only solo Batman movie on my list. It's Batman Under the Red Hood.
Okay,
So I can't remember who plays Batman in that movie.
Bruce Greenwood did.
Yeah, okay, so you have Bruce Greenwood as Batman,
Mhm.
but the ones that really stole the show for me were Jansen Ackles, Jason Todd,
Yep.
and the little that he is in the movie, I thought Neil Patrick Harris was a perfect Nightwing.
See, I agree with you there, but I love John DiMaggio in that film as the Joker. I think
Oh, he
it's
was
like
phenomenal
other than
too.
Mark Hamill, if I had to choose another Joker to voice, I'd choose John DiMaggio in a heartbeat.
But Jensen Ackles really stole the show with that movie. He did, and I am not a Red Hood fan. Like if you ask me who my least favorite characters in DC Comics are, my answers will probably be Harley Quinn and Jason Todd. But this movie made me like Jason Todd a little bit.
The the That's why I said it's fun now to see Jason Ackles go from Red Hood, and now he's the voice of Batman. And to hear him, because he's always been a proponent of playing Batman, he wants to play Batman. So now he's got his chance to be the animated version of him, and he has done really well with him. It's the only voice actor I've really enjoyed lately to take on a mantle, and Jason Ackles is doing a really good job with Batman. I think. Like he's not Kevin Conroy, but he's up.
Well,
But like, what would you say is your favorite part of the movie? Let me ask you that, because
of Under the Red Hood, I mean, saying the final confrontation between Jason and Bruce is kind of like a cop-out answer at this point. But I like the reveal. I think the reveal is probably my favorite part where Bruce is in the Batcave, Alfred's back there bandaging up Grayson, and Bruce does the thing on the back computer where he's able to kind of pull Jason's voice out of the distorted audio. And the reveal of like, oh, this guy knows who Bruce
right,
is
it's
dropped, and that just kind of sets everything in motion. So I would say that is probably my favorite part of the movie.
okay. All right. I'll jump to my number 3. This is probably the one we've talked about a lot, Bryce. Why Mary does not like Batman, because this guy keeps a lot of secrets and then yells at others when they do stupid stuff. But this movie is really well done. It is based off a comic that of a writer that Bryce actually got to meet, Mr. Mark Waid. I'm going with Justice League Doom. I love this film, and of course, we're talking about it's based off the story Tower of Babel, which is issues 43 through 46 of the JLA series. This is a fun story of what if Batman's plans gone the wrong hands. Now, we know that Batman's a very tactile learner. He's very hands on. He learns how others' weaknesses work, and he keeps contingency files on every single member of the Justice League. Well, one day in the movie, I'm going to ask this question because in the comic, it's Rage Al Ghul who is able to Raz Al Ghul, Rage Al Ghul, however you want to say it, is the one that steals the plan. In the movie, it's the Legion of Doom that has Vandal Savage, Mirror Master, which I thought was kind of different, Bane, Metallo, Star Sapphire, and Malifaux, and Cheetah. And they all take on different proponents of the team. So it's kind of like their vice, like here's your Justice League, here's your polar opposites. Other than Bane and Batman, I was kind of like, it could have been a good moment for Joker or somebody like that to have that moment. I'd even put Scarecrow up there before Bane. But anyway, not the I was not a Bane guy when this movie came out. This is shortly during the time frame where Dark Knight Rises was coming out, and Dark Knight Rises for me was just one of those movies I was like, I could live it or take it with Bane.
See,
And
that's how I am with Vandal Savage. I'm not a fan of Vandal Savage being the leader. I think it should always be Lex Luthor.
that's where I agree. I did like the twist with it that Vandal Savage was kind of lead because I do like Vandal Savage, but I agree. Vandal Savage is so much terror or so more terrifying by himself than when he's with a team. I did like though that it shined a light on a couple villains like Malifaux. I did like that. Malifaux is the brother of Martian Manhunter, um,
Yep.
and it's different because you don't really hear much about him, and it was kind of unique. Metallo being the villain for Superman, I thought was unique.
Mirror Master.
Mirror Master being the villain for Flash. Cheetah and Wonder Woman is kind of like you kind of knew that was coming, and that's what's sad. Wonder Woman does have pretty unique villains, and they
So
work.
who are they going to get? Dr. Psycho?
Doctor Psycho. Well, yeah, I see what you're saying, but even then, Ares. But even Ares wouldn't work with somebody like that. Not with Vandal. There's
No.
no way he would work with Vandal. But Cheetah was good. I did like Star Sapphire. I kind of thought, but there's always that nostalgic feeling of Super Friends. I want Sinestro. I don't want Star Sapphire. Hell, I would even take an Atrocitus at that point. Atrocitus
Larfleeze
was
would have been
out.
cool.
Huh?
I think Larfleeze would have been cool.
Larfleeze. This is my time. I would have seen that. I could have seen them do that. You imagine him and who was I thinking? Him and or Malthok working together. They would hate each other. But
Well, Larfleeze hates everybody.
but let me ask you guys this: do you like the concept of it's only one villain who steals it and uses it against them, or a team that steals it? Because Mark Waid did the single, the movie did the team,
I like the idea of it being a single threat.
the single threat. At this point, let me ask you this: if it was just Vandal, would you have accepted that? Like if it
Possibly.
was no team and it was Vandal Savage taking it down,
Possibly.
or who in the movie if it wasn't Rage, who would you have went with?
See, Raish is kind of the one where, like, Raish makes the most sense. I would say either Raish, Vandal, or Lex, because personally, I think Lex could outsmart the entire Justice League.
I
And
agree.
maybe that's just because I'm a biased Lex Luthor fan.
So if
Lex
so,
Luthor.
but like you said, now at this point, say if it was Lex in this case and not Vandal in charge of Legion Do, would you have been okay with the team being the one that does it? That Lex is manipulating
Yeah.
the.
Yeah.
I agree with you there. I like the single threat more, but if it was Lex, I could see more of the team. Like, okay, Lex is not going to do it by himself. He's a manipulator. He's going to manipulate the situation.
Well, why would Lex get his hands dirty if he doesn't have to?
He'll do all the techie outsmarting things, but he's going to let everybody else do the work. I agree with that. I enjoy this film. It's really well done. The animation's great. The original cast came back from the Justice League. That's what I also love about this. Kevin Conroy's Batman. Susan Eisenberg comes back as Wonder Woman, so on and so forth. It's just a really well thought out film. The animation style I do enjoy a lot. Even the design for um, gosh, I can't even remember their name. The Royal Flush Gang was amazing. I thought. I love Aces and Superman's fight in the beginning of the film. That actually made me have a little nostalgia feel.
My number three is one you got me onto. I really enjoy it for the animation aspect, and I'll get into it. But it is Justice League New Frontier. I really love this movie. One thing I'll start off with is the cast and how stacked it is. You got David Boreanaz, who I don't know if I probably butchered that last name. That's the guy from Bones. Miguel Ferrer, Neil Patrick Harris, John Hurd, who, if nobody knows, that is the dad from Home Alone. Lucy Lawless, my personal favorite in the movie, Kyle MacLachlan, who plays Superman. Dale Cooper himself. That's a Twin Peaks reference. Kira Sedgwick as Lois Lane, Brooke Shields, uh, and Jeremy Sisto as Batman. Um, Keith
Who did Neil
David,
Patrick Harris play? Was he Green Lantern?
No, he's
uh,
Barry.
he's Barry Allen.
Barry Allen.
He's
Yeah,
Barry.
I could see that.
The guy from Bones was Hal.
Okay.
I think the one that shocked me the most was Brooke Shields being in this.
Brooke Shields was Carol Ferris. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's just a little odd putting her in this, but
but see, I told Pat when he first watched, I was like, Neil McDonough's in this. And
mhm.
he's like, and I go, and he plays the biggest ass in the comics. Like he is like his character in the comic is like the biggest ass you would ever think of. The
Who's
one,
his character? Because
the
I've
one.
not seen New Frontier.
So the New Frontier, there's this guy. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I know he plays an asshole, but it's the whole thing of he works with Martian Manhunter, so he kind of works with Ferris, but he's kind of like the government agent. He's the one that is seeing, and he's the one that discovers Martian Manhunter is who because Martian Manhunter comes to Earth and he camouflages himself, and then what happens is that he's the one that finds out when he's trying to go back home, and my favorite scene is when they're playing chess together
Mhm.
in the prison cell.
Yeah,
He, like he's in charge of like the Suicide Squad or Task Force X at that point. You know, there was different things with that
So
team.
he's kind of like the Waller stand-in.
Pretty much at this point, correct. It's
but yeah, no, I mean, I think I think the cover artwork of this movie is awesome too. I know I said that about another movie, but this one has a very 50s feel to it. Like it's very I don't know if you have it in front of you, Brandon, but I'm sure you've seen the
well,
cover of it.
well, if you don't mind, Bryce, I'll go over my number two because it is the New Frontier. I have it right here. I have that, and I have the comic it's based off of.
It's like Darwin
Nice.
Cook, baby.
What was that, Bryce?
Darwin Cook.
Darwin Cook. Darwin Cook is the reason I fell in love with this. Darwin Cook, he did comics throughout, but he wasn't like a mainstream writer. He wasn't like, say, Mark Wade or anybody like that. He did his comics every so often. And he did the Parker series, which I enjoyed. He did Batman Ego, which is a very popular Batman comics, very underrated in my eyes. But this, what I love the movie for too, is that Darwin Cook comes on as a storyboard artist, and not only that, a producer of the film. And I love that. I love the nostalgia feeling, like you said, Pat goes back to the 50-ish time
Yeah.
frame. That's because it takes it back to the Silver Age, and we know Darwin Cook is a huge fan of the Silver Age of comics. He always references back to that. You know,
Mhm.
rest in peace, Darwin Cooks. We're never going to get somebody like him ever again. Um, but it's it's such a fun tale. I do like the way he designs Green Arrow in this. He takes him back to the old vintage Robin Hood look
Yeah.
of it. He designs Flash really well. Green Lantern's kind of like my only thing that I'm like, yeah, it's there, but it's not. Well, let me go over this quick too before I get to that point. I love how the story doesn't focus around the main trinity. It does not focus centrally around Superman, Wonder Woman, or Batman. It focuses around Flash, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter. And I love that. Like one of my favorite scenes still to this day, even in the movie and in the comic, is when Martian Manhunter is standing in front of the TV and he changes into anybody he sees, just to get familiar with his powers, and he settles on the detective to be his persona throughout. Um, I love where Batman, you find out Batman realizes this is not who he thinks it is.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite lines still to this day is, make no mistake, I have a $70,000 sliver of a radioactive meteor to stop the one from Metropolis. All I need for you is a penny for a book of matches, because we find out Martian Manhunter's weakness is fire.
Stuff.
And I love that
That
scene. When you see him jumping out of the window, that's when he says it, and I'm just like, love it. I don't care. That is like one of my favorite scenes, and that's straight out of the comic.
Mhm.
I remember talking to Mary about that, and she goes, of course you would like that scene. I'm like, I do like Batman in that scene. It's just funny to see it the way he does it. I love the iconic ending. It's just a great story from beginning to end. This is the only time where I feel like parts of the comic that were taken out or that were not included in the movie actually work, but he still references them in the movie. So like John Henry scene in the comic is more as a reference. But of course, at the end you have the iconic JFK speech, which is the definition of this story, and it's both in the comic, both in the movie. It's really well done, and it defines what this comic was all about. And to see that, it's just really well done. The score for it is amazing. It's a really great story. So no, I'm glad it made your list. I'm glad I got you inspired to
You
watch that.
inspired me, man. I'm telling you. No, I love it. I love, like I said, the animation. It's so simple, but yet so like the colors just pop. Everything's awesome about it. It's visually satisfying to watch.
Let's,
So
let's see if you know this one. I don't expect you to know the superhero. I expect Bryce to know the superhero. But in the boxing match in that, who was fighting? It's in the comic. You should know the hero, Bryce, because there's only one boxer that we know that's been known as a boxer other than a superhero. So, but
Oh, yeah. Wait, hang on.
JSA member.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It's versus Muhammad Ali, or known at the time as Cassius Clay. So they do that in the comic where they write Cassius Clay versus Ted Grant. So, but all right. So let's turn over. So I've went over my number two at this point. So we're gonna go to Bryce for his number two.
So my number two is actually a team up movie, and it's one that came out recently that I think it came out within the last couple years that not a lot of people I don't think would put in their top five, but it's my number two. And it's Batman Superman Battle of the Super Sons.
mm,
That's a good one. That is a good one.
So this movie was actually written by one of my favorite current comic book writers, Jeremy Adams.
I knew
And
that was gonna make your list just when that came up. I was like Jeremy Adams. Like it
yeah,
came in my head.
Jeremy Adams. I'm a huge Damian Wayne fan. Damian Wayne is my favorite Robin. Even though Dick Grayson is my favorite member of the Bat family, I like Damian Wayne as Robin more. And it was nice to see a young John Kent again. Because John Kent in the comics was aged up by Brian Michael Bendis. And that's a decision that I'm not a fan of. It's a decision that a lot of Superman fans aren't a fan of. So it was great to see a young John again, and it was great to see John and Damian team up when all the other Justice League members were incapacitated. And it really showed um not only their individual strengths, but also their strengths when they come together. It's a very typical generic team up movie. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it's a lot of fun. And I said I would get to my Batman versus Superman takes. It's not really Batman versus Superman. It's Robin versus Superboy that I really care about here. And I do think in this instance Robin takes it. With this movie specifically, I don't know, I like that it sidelined a lot of the Justice League and it highlighted um the younger heroes, because I do think the younger heroes and the legacy heroes are what make DC as good as it is. Like if
Yeah,
it were just the Justice League, I probably wouldn't like DC as much as I do.
I agree. I agree with you there. I think then when they take on different twists of different characters and doesn't focus just on, that's why I think I like the New Frontier so much, is that it's not focused on the main Trinity. It's focused on different things to make them stand out. We know the stories of Batman. We know the stories of Superman and Wonder Woman. We don't know the stories of the other members. So it takes a different new twist on it. But no, that's a great pick. I'm glad that made our list too, because it was one I overshadowed. It was it's one I'd watch, but it's like it's on the upper half than the bottom half animated. But all right, Pat.
That is the one I said. Trouble in Tokyo was like the one I would rewatch the most after another movie. This is
You
the
know
one
what?
that I would rewatch the most. Is Battle of the Super Sons.
Battle of the Super Sons. I'm gonna have to take. I'll have to do that because I was actually about to watch Trouble in Tokyo. I saw it on because I have Max. It's on there.
Yeah.
And it caught my eye, and I was like, "That's cool. I like that title, Trouble in Tokyo." Like it's, I don't know, makes it feel like an adventure.
I will say the movie is a lot better um, if you watch the series
Hmm.
because a lot of it is payoff.
Okay,
I
so
agree.
basically the series builds up to that movie, and then the movie.
Well, it's like
Exactly.
Bryce said, it like it finally gives you that kind of like it's not the ending, but it's like a
It
satisfying.
gives you some closure.
Yeah.
I got you.
Well,
Um, my number two is I was really flirting with this either being my number one, and it ended up being my number two. But Bryce mentioned the comics earlier in this. It is Batman Year One. Um, I love this movie. I love Bryan Cranston as James Gordon. I love the concept of how this movie is formatted, how it's narrated by Bryan Cranston, James Gordon, but it's kind of like the beginning of James Gordon and Bruce Wayne's relationship, or I should say, of how they intertwine in this universe. James Gordon's moving from Chicago. He transfers here. Bruce Wayne is returning from being abroad 12 years. Uh, the animation in this makes it really. The animation makes it, in my opinion, like a kind of like a the way I portrayed it to be was like a more raunchy cartoon, but not so much raunchy to where it was just like it was gritty, but it felt very like Grand Theft Auto esque to me. It did, if that makes sense. One thing I wrote down too, which I thought was kind of interesting, is this movie brought in over $6 million on a $3.5 million budget, which I think is pretty successful for a DC animated movie.
Oh
I
yeah.
I didn't do research on any of the other movies I did, but I thought that was one that stood out to me. Elijah Dushku as Catwoman is pretty awesome. I mean, that's a childhood crush right there. I don't know if any of you guys have seen Bring It On, but man,
of course you would bring it up. Of
of
course you would
course,
bring up
dude.
Bring It On.
Yeah, what am I? Yeah, dude.
The
Oh,
guy
what
put
am I gonna
Bring It
bring up?
On in his top 10 sports movies of all time.
No, I didn't. I didn't. It was in my honorable mentions, right?
Oh, James doesn't make it.
Hey, listen.
Yeah.
Everybody's got an unconventional sports movie pick. Okay, his is Bring It On. Mine's Real Steel.
Yeah.
Real Steel with
Mine's
Hugh.
Angels in the outfield. So at
What
this,
is it?
mine's Angels in the outfield. So at this point,
Oh man, Pat, what'd you say?
I said, is that the one with Hugh Jackman?
Yeah,
yep.
with like the mecha
Like robot
boxing.
boxers? Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't seen that. That's been a minute since I've seen that one.
That's a good movie. That's probably one of my other favorite Hugh
Is it
Jackman.
really? I know "Till I Collapse" from Eminem was like a uh, big song on that soundtrack.
Well, yeah, that
Really,
and
yeah,
well,
it's a
Bad and
great
Evil did a
song.
lot of stuff for that soundtrack. Like, it, but
But no, I just think how the way this movie's formatted again, with it being narrated by Bryan Cranston, who has got an amazing voice for that. You
Bryan
got to think
Cranston
too
would
when
be a
this
great
movie.
live action Gordon.
What's
oh,
that?
I think
The
he.
Bryan
Oh,
Cranston would be a
dude,
great live action Gordon.
100%. Especially at the age he is now, he's perfect for it.
Well, yeah, like it's like we said, like Gary Oldman was a great. You
Yeah.
have what was it? Jake.
Jeffrey Jeffrey Wright's really good too.
Yeah, and then you have J.K. Simmons, which was only in it for like one movie, and then they never did it. But so before we go to our number ones, let's go over our honorable mentions. So Bryce, what movies made your honorable mentions?
I'm gonna say Batman Bad Blood, Son of Batman,
Yeah, that was one. No.
Justice League War. I know that one's not loved by a lot of people, but I really enjoy it. I'm gonna say Justice League Doom is an honorable mention for me. I really enjoyed a lot of aspects of Green Lantern Beware My Power.
Yeah, that's one I'm shocked you didn't put on your list because how much you talk about how you love that movie.
I don't love Hal Jordan in that movie, and that's kind of a deal breaker for me.
I see your. I can see your.
And I think the last one I'm gonna put in my honorable mentions is gonna be Superman versus the Elite.
That's a good one too. I like him versus Manchester. That's one of my favorite, like underrated villains. It's Manchester.
Oh yeah.
Uh, I'll go over mine fast. I did have the Flashpoint Paradox. I did have Son of Batman as well. I think it's the best Slade we've gotten since Teen Titans, and they ruined him with the Judas Contract
See,
movie.
Judas Contract is actually another honorable mention of mine that I forgot about, but not because of Slade.
Yeah, I was like, if you say it for Slade, I was like, no, because they.
No. Oh no, no, never mind. Not Judas Contract. Justice League versus Teen
There you
Titans.
go. Yes, because
Justice
Slade.
League versus Teen Titans because I loved seeing Damien's interactions with the other teenage heroes.
But I also love the scenes where you. My favorite part of that movie, before we go to my honorables quick, uh, I love the ending scene with Raven and him going to hell, and then they have to face Rage and have to face Trigun.
Yeah.
It's unique how to see that. But I had Justice League Dark Apocalypse War on mine. That was I enjoy that movie. I Green Lantern Emerald Knights. I
Nice.
almost went with First Flight on this one, but I said I do enjoy Emerald Knights just because we get Kilowog's kind of backstory. We get one of my favorites, and it still makes me tear up when I see it, is Lyra's. And seeing her backstory, it does make you tear. But it's like there's a whole big event going on, but there's all these side stories that really lift up some of these side characters. Um, and Lyra's my favorite. She's become one of my favorites because of this movie, and I've actually went in more of a deep dive with her. Um, Justice League Crisis on Two Earths, I do enjoy, and it's not because of who you think I enjoy. I love Owlman, and people don't know who Owlman's voiced by. That is Hades himself from Hercules.
James Woods.
James Wood. And
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
that guy is amazing.
love James
I,
Woods,
I
man.
don't like that movie as much. I
Well,
think it's just because I'm not a fan of the Crime Syndicate.
I agree with you there. I'm not either. I'm not a fan of him, but I do like Owlman. I think he is like the most like I fear him more than Batman. And it's just because Owlman, think of Batman reversed. So in this Earth, Pat, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
Hmm.
This is Earth 3. So what if the heroes were villains? And what if the villains were heroes? So like Joker and Lex are heroes.
Yeah.
That's weird.
But Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman are all villains.
That's crazy. Could you imagine Superman being a bad guy? That's
Flash is the one that would scare me most.
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Yes,
He was yeah, no.
because at least I'd be able to see Superman.
Yeah.
Flash
But
is just so quick you wouldn't see it coming. I got you.
With Owlman though, Owlman almost reminds me of if Bruce Wayne had like a Rorschach complex.
yeah, that's exactly what I thought too. It's it's so unique to see that how he's melatonin, how he hates the human race. The same event happened to him. We know that. The same event happened to him where his parents died, but he went polar opposite and went, I don't like humanity because humanity is dark. Humanity is not where it needs to be. Um, and I love him, and but that's a kind of a unique cast too, because Stephen Baldwin is Bruce Wayne.
Wait, you said Stephen Baldwin? Did I get that right?
Stephen Baldwin is Bruce Wayne. and the dude from NCIS, I can't remember his name. Mark
Mark Harmon.
is Superman. Thank you, Bryce. Mark Harmon is
Mark
Superman.
Harmon, huh? From
That is an
NCIS.
interesting. That's an interesting choice.
Now, that what's unique about this too is that this was supposed to be off the Justice League animated series. This was supposed to be a few episodes, and then they scratched it. And then they kind of did something with it, but that's not where they wanted it to go. And then that's when they were supposed to do this, and then they scratched the idea. Here comes the movie. Um, but the other one I have on here is based off the Justice League animated series. It is Justice League versus the Fatal Five. And I love this movie because there's one Green Lantern that is in this, and she is one of my favorite Green Lanterns, period. And that is Jessica Cruz. Jessica
Nice.
Cruz is in this
Nice.
movie, and the Legionnaires are in this. How can you not like the Legionnaires? Yeah, it's just a really great movie. The animation style, that Kevin Conroy is Batman in this film, which makes my heart sink a little. Like, it makes me feel good that the original cast came back. There were some new members like Miss Martian's in it, Mr. Terrific's in it. So there's just mixed in with a lot of nostalgic feelings, and especially with Jessica Cruz being the highlight of the film. It's just amazing to see that. So, but yeah, those are my honorables. So, Pat, what were your honorables?
My honorables, I have three, and I have Suicide Squad: Hell to Pay. I have Superman, Batman, Apocalypse, and my other one is Superman Red Sun. Now, I really enjoyed Superman Red Sun. I thought it was a different take on how everything goes, with it being a Russian Superman, kind of different. Threw me off when I watched it for the first time, but I like it. It's a really good movie. Superman Batman Apocalypse was another good one too. I like the visuals in the movie. I like the battle sequences and all that kind of stuff. So and then the Suicide Squad one was okay. It was just one that I actually got to watch and kind of sit down. I thought the animation kind of reflected more 90s style animation, which I thought was different. At least for it being released in 2018. So um yeah.
Apocalypse, I feel like they had a missed opportunity because we do see Big Barda in that, but we only see Mr. Miracle's costume. We do not see Mr. Miracle. Bryce knows I am a Mr. Miracle fan. So seeing that you see Big Barda, and it's like, yeah, that's amazing. I want Mr. Miracle. And then it's like,
Mhm.
he's nowhere to be found. And it's like, why?
Was Orion in that movie at all?
Huh?
Was Orion in that movie at all?
It's just Big Barda, and then they take on a Dark Side and Granny Goodness.
Dang. Well,
So to
Granny
me,
Goodness.
Granny Goodness, yeah, but can't have them without Mr. Miracle. And that's what makes it so like don't give me that tease. Give me Mr. Miracle.
Give me Mr. Miracle.
But all right, Bryce, what is your
Uh, Hey, Pat. So, Mr. Miracle. You want to know something interesting about Mr. Miracle?
What's that?
So his whole thing is he's an escape artist.
Okay.
You like to know what his name is out of the costume?
Yeah.
Wait, when he's not Mr. Miracle, what's
When
his
he's
actual
not
name?
Mr. Miracle, keep in mind he's an escape artist.
Okay.
His name is Scott Free.
He got off scot free. Uh,
Yep.
bravo. I like it.
Jack
Very
Kirby.
creative there.
Jack Kirby.
All right, so before I get
Good
into my
talk.
number one, it is a DC AMU movie, so I want to highlight something from the DC AMU that I haven't gotten to highlight yet, and that is Nathan Fillion as Hal Jordan. I thought just he was a perfect voice cast, and if he were a little bit younger, I would have him play Hal Jordan instead of Guy Gardner.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you actually like that he's going to be Guy in the live action films, or not really?
I'm open to it. James Gunn has not given me a reason not to trust him
Okay.
ever,
Right.
so I'm open to it. But my number one, Brandon, is actually one that you named in your honorable mentions, and that is Justice League Dark Apocalypse War.
Okay, so that shocks me because I know you're not a John Constantine fan, and John Constantine.
I'm not a John Constantine fan. However, I'm a Darkseid fan. I'm a Damian Wayne fan. I'm a Raven fan.
So, heart take before we get into it. Do you like Robin's and Raven's relationship?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm not the
Yes.
only one.
The only complaint that I have about Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, and it's a complaint that I have with not just that movie, not just the DCAMU, but DC as a whole, DC hates Nightwing.
Yeah, they do. I hate how they did him in that movie.
DC hates Nightwing, and that is my biggest gripe
Like they hate him as
with
far
him.
as they don't like putting him in stuff, or just the way they portray the
Oh no,
character.
they put him in stuff.
Yeah, they just
They
portray
just, erase his memory, have him go insane,
They bully
put him
him,
in
so
the
to speak.
Lazarus
They
pit, and
bully
make
right.
him lose his mind.
Yeah, that's pretty much what they did in this movie. Is that he did lose his life, or he was about to lose his life.
He
Damien put them
he
in the Lazarus
he
pit.
died saving Damien.
Yeah, Damien felt guilty and put him in the Lazarus pit. It's the
It
way
was a great character moment for Damien,
right.
but it was at Grayson's expense.
Yeah, I remember seeing him turn. I was like, I don't like you. Like, just close the door and not show
But
me again.
as far as the rest of that movie goes, it's this version, it's this universe's version of Avengers Endgame. That is the closest thing I could compare it to, but honestly, in a lot of ways, I think it was done better
Yeah,
because it's not that I mind the time travel plot in Endgame, but I do like that this movie, rather than trying to go back and redo everything, took it on the chin and said, this is where we're at. This is our situation. This is what we have to deal with. How are we going to deal with it? And I like the fact that even though Superman was depowered, he was still the one to take charge. He was still the one to take the reins, even in Batman's absence.
I love how he uses Lex's uniform. That made me laugh so hard because I was like, oh, he's probably hating himself right now that he's has to wear something of Lex's. Uh,
And I think this movie, too, speaking again on Damien's character, because I do think, like, you could talk about all the different characters in the DC animated movie universe. Damian Wayne is the central character.
I would agree with you to a certain extent because I do feel like John Constantine is the focus, and I
He's the
do
focus of that movie. I'm talking about the entire universe, though.
agreed. I agree with you there. Damien, since Son of Batman, which was his first
Yeah.
appearance, there's been a very centralized focus on it, and it's done really well.
Yeah. Like if we're putting it in terms of, like, I know we're all big Star Wars fans here.
Yep.
Damien Damien is this universe's Anakin.
It's the chosen one.
Yes and no. They make him out to be. They make him out to be like, oh, this universe lives and dies with this kid.
Right.
And so knowing that and seeing his arc come full circle, especially seeing how it comes full circle in this movie with what happened with Dick and him basically stepping in front of Bruce when Darkseid shot his Omega beams at Bruce and saying, like, no, like, I'm not letting another member of my family die for me.
Even though Batman could have died in that scene, I was actually on board with him dying there. I hate to say it, but it was
I
the one.
was too, but it was full circle for Damien. It completed his arc, basically going from somebody who did not care about family, didn't want family, to being able to, like, being willing to lay down his life for these people that he's come to know and love.
Great.
I thought his arc was done beautifully, and then the ending is probably one of the most bittersweet endings that I've ever seen in a movie,
Yeah.
where this whole universe started with the Flashpoint paradox. It started as a result of Barry going back in time and then breaking the universe and then fixing the universe. And then Constantine kind of going up to Barry and saying, "Hey, you need to do this again, right? Like, all these people, like, these people have suffered, these people have died. We can't go on with what we've been through." And it ends with Barry running across the ocean to start another Flashpoint. It's just it's beautiful in my opinion. I remember when I first saw that movie, I couldn't stop thinking about it for a week.
It is a good movie, and that's why I said it was this one and Flashpoint Paradox were the ones that's like, okay, do I take Dark Knight and World War II off because Apocalypse War is important, and I do feel like talking from the John Constantine side of things, and I know you're not a fan of John Constantine. I do enjoy him in some aspects. Um,
I
I
liked him in this movie.
Yeah, that's what I said. This movie's a little different. I think it was like a redemption thing for him. Like he has to now realize that even though, yeah, his love interest Santana is dead, he realizes that's what I love about too. Is you realize that he was tricked,
Yeah.
and it was by
It's
them.
not as supernaturally focused on for his character either. Like he's kind of in the same boat as everybody else. So I think that's why I liked his character more in this
There
movie.
is one character. Two things I want to bring up quick. I know you, Etrigan. I love Etrigan in this. He's like sitting there, just this is no fun, and he's just a big old demon sitting there drinking a beer.
Etrigan meeting Damien for the first time.
Oh, that made me laugh. That made me. I like him, and then I just love. And then you see how scary if Trigon possessed Superman, and how scary that situation truly.
Well, you saw that in Teen Titans versus the Justice League.
Granted, but I'm meaning like when you see him when he takes off that kryptonite shield off and stuff like that to take on some like that's one of my favorite fights still to this day is Trigun and Darkseid going at it to each other. And I just love it. I don't know why, but I hate what they did with Cyborg. Because I feel like Cyborg 2
Oh, where they put him into the source wall?
mainframe. They put him in the mainframe of Apocalypse. And pretty much there was no way for him to escape at that point. He was gonna have to sacrifice himself. And that whole first scene is so brutal, it's unreal. It's like the most brutal you have ever seen DC animated go. And it's
Easily.
very bloody, it's not even close. But Justice League Dark is such a great franchise. I have enjoyed all their animated films. Um, but yeah, I'm glad it made your list. I was shocked when you said it at first, but now I can see why you had it. Um, but I'm going to go to my number one, and it is a movie that was already stated. I kept quiet, didn't say a word, but I did chime in a little bit because if there's one thing Bryce knows, there is a character from the Bat family I do enjoy, and he has stated he does not. I have Under the Red Hood. It is. This
Forget
is.
you're a Jason Todd fan.
I am a Jason Todd. This is where I grew my love for Jason Todd. Now, granted, I don't like the new 52 crap. I still say that to this very day. DC ruined him with New 52. They somewhat brought him back with what they've done with him with the Outlaws now. But anyway, I love this story. Bryce really summed it up really well. Fact being that it does center around Jason Todd that we think is dead. He is not. But I do like because I believe the comics retconned, and then that's the retcon they used to how they brought him back to life. Because if you really want to get convoluted in comics, Pat, Jason Todd was not brought back by a Lazarus pit originally. He was brought back during Infinite Crisis when Superboy Prime decided to hit the reality really, really hard and change things up, including Jason Todd coming back. They retcon that by saying, no, Ra's al Ghul put him in the Lazarus pit, which I think makes 10 times more sense. Still don't make tons of sense, but it's better than Superboy Prime hitting reality, really. But Batman Under the Red Hood, I agree with you. It's a cop out to go for it, but it is an iconic scene with the whole confrontation at the end, where you see Jason pretty much give Batman the choice, and he throws him a gun and pretty much states either you shoot him, you shoot the Joker, or you shoot me. And I love that whole speech where he goes, why couldn't you just killed him? He took me off this earth, and you didn't do nothing about it. So it's like a sense of, for all that I did for you, you couldn't take out the one person who went out. The one thing that you enjoyed the most, the one person that you had in your life. And let's. Do you know? Like we talked about earlier, Bryce. See, Pat knows. Do you know what they did with Jason Todd in the comics?
In what regard? Because they've done a lot with him.
So let's put it this way: when
I'd
he
say they've done a lot to him.
because he was in Crisis, it was after Crisis that he came out,
Yeah.
and people did not like it because it was like a repeat of Dick Grayson. They wanted something different.
So,
Something.
slight correction there. The Dick Grayson copy era was before Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Okay, my bad. Yes, and then they
They
changed
they
it up.
changed they changed it after Crisis to him stealing the tires.
Right now, what happens though is that people still hated it.
Yeah.
So what did DC Comics decide to do? We're gonna make a hotline where people could call in to vote to see if
Oh
they
my.
vote to kill
See
or
if he
vote
lives
to
or
keep.
dies.
That's for real?
And,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's real.
I know a couple guys that voted in it.
And there's a rumor that there was an auto dial for somebody to say no, and it just kept on auto dialing and voting no.
Yeah, I
There is,
think that vote ended up him dying ended up winning by like 70 votes.
yeah, it, and then that's where you
It
get
was
the iconic.
close.
Yeah, that's where you get the iconic comic of Death in the Family, because that's where Jason dies, and then he's brought back to life. Of course, not by a writer that we also know Mary's not a fan of, Judd Winnick, that does this. But this is where I feel like he shines more than what he does in Green Arrow.
Yeah.
He does shine in certain comics. He does not shine with Green Arrow.
Although you could argue that Judd Winnick uh, kind of took that idea from a much more talented comic book writer, in my opinion, named Ed Brubaker,
Yeah, I agree with the Winter
because the
Soldier.
Red Hood came out the same year as the Winter Soldier.
And the Winter Soldier is pretty much the same exact thing. Brought back to life, or is thought to be dead, not dead, and he's been this all along. I agree with you there. But I think like with Jason Todd, my favorite part is Ra's al Ghul. Now, Ra's al Ghul, you'll like this, Pat, because of who voices him. Jason Isaacs
Oh, okay.
is Rage.
Jason.
And we find out Rage brought him back to life because we find out he had a part in it with hiring the Joker. But he did not realize the Joker would go as far as he did by killing, because there's a sense of respect between him and Batman. That's the reason why he calls him detective. That's why he calls him so much, because that's like a distinct of respect.
He's
He's
also
always
basically his father-in-law.
pretty much, which yeah. Well, that the Lost Days is what ruined that whole thing with her, Jason Todd and Talia getting together, and that was just like, no, that should never happen.
It
But
was the reverse Dick and Barbara.
but I love the scene where you see him really. That's probably my favorite part of the movie, is where you really see him like explain what truly happened to Batman. And but my also favorite thing too is when say you think the unmasking, I actually like the scene where he's decrypting what the guy, what the Red Hood said in the train station when they had the train
No,
run.
yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Oh, I thought you were meaning like when he revealed the or took off the mask.
No,
Uh,
like the reveal of like the vocal match where it's like 100% match, Jason Todd.
Jason Todd, and then you see Alfred in the back drop
Yep.
all the stuff because he's freaked out. But that's just I like how he cuts the line too. I think that's probably one of my favorite things from an animated movie from DC is when they grapple him and then he just takes that knife and just slashes through the grappling. And they're like, how many people like he was Batman was trying to explain to Dick, like, there's something wrong with that. And he goes, well, what do you mean? And he goes, how many people can actually cut through my lines? And it's very rare. And then at that point, you start figuring out this is somebody who knows Batman very well. But yeah, Under the Red Hood is a great movie. This was my favorite movie. That ending scene does make me tear up still to this very days. When we, after the bombing, everything like that happens, we get a flashback scene with Jason on his very first night as Robin, and it still makes me tear up every so often. But it's a great movie. Jason Ackles, like Bryce said, is an amazing actor for this. He is heck, he could be my Jason Todd live action still to this very day, and I still love it. But yeah, Under the Red Hood. That's why I kept quiet as much as I could, and you went over it because I was like, not gonna say a word because I love this movie so much. So, all right, but yeah, so we'll turn it over to Pat for his final pick, and trust me, there's no judgment here, Pat.
Okay. Well, this one was a purely nostalgic choice for me. I love the design of the Batman and Robin, for that matter, in this movie. I'm going with Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub Zero.
Yeah, that's
I absolutely love this movie, man. I just watched it gearing up for this, and it instantly within the first 5 minutes of watching it, I'm like, yeah, this is probably going to be up there for me. I love the visuals, the colors, and the costumes for Batman Robin. To me, this is the epitome of This is what Batman should look like. I don't know. I just love like how he has the gray with the black cape, and then the black cape has the blue highlights to it. It just looks so clean. It's fresh. Robin's is kind of the same thing where the cape has like the blue highlights, but he's got the green, the yellow, and the red. Um, and another thing too is I think after watching this movie, it really made me realize who my favorite DC villain truly is, and it's Mr. Freeze. I love Mr. Freeze.
now
Valid.
you know why we bash you when you say, "Oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze is not terrible." No, he is bad because that was after the Batman the animated series that retconned his whole origin story to what you know and love from Sub Zero.
Got it. And well, I mean, he's got a different look in this movie compared to what he has in Batman and Robin, right? I mean,
That's a
it's a
good reason.
completely different portrayal.
And there's reason for that. We love that. We
Yeah.
love that iconic look
Uh-huh.
compared to like the first scene you see him. And Bryce, I'm not sure if you've seen this scene, but when you see the Heart of Ice episode, which by the way, Pat, you would enjoy because it's an Emmy winner. The first scene you see with Mr. Freeze is just his red eyes. It
Yeah,
is
I remember that
very
episode.
iconic to see him do that. And the first time you see a full body shot is when he goes around the corner and shoots Batman with the freeze. It
Got
is
it.
very iconic and it's very tragic. This is one of those villains like he's not so much a villain by trade. He's a villain because he has to be. And that's where it's so different to see it. And I
Mhm.
love Sub-Zero at the end where you get the iconic scene in the Antarctica where he hears the news that Nora was saved. But then you think, why couldn't Bruce help him out before? Why couldn't he just say, "Hey, I got the sources and the funds to help you out
Yep.
for you"? Bryce is shaking his head.
Who knows?
Um, I like kind of how the story is too. How at the end of the day, Mr. Freeze is just trying to save his wife, right? He's trying to revive her, and he ends up kidnapping Belson, who is currently having financial issues, and he hires him to help him find a cure for his wife. But the only thing is that she needs an organ transplant, and by doing that, they need to kill somebody. Uh, I mean, that's as far as what Mister Freeze wants to do, right? Um, they learn that Batgirl is a perfect match as well for Mrs. Freeze or Mrs. Freeze. Well, I guess that's her name, right?
Nora Freeze.
It's
Nora.
Nora. Got it. I had Nora down on here too.
Nora.
And then I love the way it ends. Kind of ends on a downer for Mister Freeze, as far as his wife got saved. Yeah, but now he can't really
He
because
can't
he's
live
such.
a life with her.
What's that?
He can't live a life with her.
Exactly. And I think that's the more heartbreaking thing about this movie. You kind of get that, in my opinion. I think you kind of get that heartbreak feeling in Batman and Robin, as
Yeah.
far as Mr. Freeze's character. I mean, that's the way I took it in that movie, where there's some aspect of wow, he really misses his wife. It even had the flashback of him
No,
falling.
no,
No. You
never
just
watch
I
that.
think it's just because you hate that movie so much, man.
Well,
I don't
okay. Now, since you have watched that movie, it's like I said, that movie took place after everything the animated series did for Mr. Freeze. Mind
know.
you, that origin episode won an Emmy, and changed the comics origin for Mr. Freeze. So you can imagine seeing how serious he is in the movie that you just chose and the animated series, and comparing to the comedic role that Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Got it.
That's where I don't like Arnold Schwarzenegger in that role. I think he is terrible. And I'm sorry, the icy puns, the iconic wave arm in a robe, it takes away that whole purpose of what he's doing.
We killed the dinosaurs.
Killed the
The Ice Age. Yeah.
That's terrible. But to me, that's what took that away, is that he's so serious in the comics.
Yeah.
He's the one person it's like I said, if Batman gave him the cure or gave him the fun, he'd probably give up villainy.
Can we admit though that I think that the Mr. Freeze costume in Batman and Robin is pretty awesome.
No.
Like, you don't like it? You don't like the
No.
silver plated and all that? I think it looks cool, man.
Not Batman and Robin. I'd go with Sub-Zero or
You like the Sub-Zero look? Okay.
like the
No,
Sub-Zero.
I mean everyone has a different opinion on it, but I mean I
What
prefer
about you, Bryce? What's your take? What's your favorite
what-
design of Mr. Freeze? And it could be anything. It can't just be art. What would you say is your favorite design?
I would say the animated series.
Okay.
The only close one to it, I do like him in the Arkham games, and it's because it's close to it, but he's got a bigger helmet. That's the thing. It's like a globe kind of thing over it.
Mm.
So, but no, Batman and Robin's no. Like, I'm sorry, when he goes to a robe, there's a problem. He's never in a robe. Period.
Yeah.
I'm just.
He's never you don't like him in a robe at all.
I hate him in a robe. You
He's
never.
he's just lounging, man. He's having a good time. I love his little
You realize that takes away his purpose, though, right? The reason he's in his suit is because he has to stay at absolute zero.
and I get that. I get that.
When a robe, he's not at absolute zero.
Let's be honest, that movie wasn't really planned out well. Okay.
No, it wasn't. Joe Schumacher, you should never make another movie. Period.
But yeah, no,
Before we
I
go
what's
out,
that again?
before we go out though, Pat, I don't think we explained something in the beginning of it.
We didn't.
Mask of the Phantasm, if you guys are thinking why this wasn't on our list, that's because before the film started, the podcast started, we talked about it and we decided Mask of the Phantasm would be an easy choice. It would be on all of our lists. Maybe Bryce, you said it might be nicked off on yours.
It might be an honorable mention on mine because I've only seen it once.
And for Pat and I, it would be 1 or 2 on our list.
Mm-hmm.
We decided because of how nostalgic it is, how popular it is, and 2, it is one of the only animated films from DC that actually made the big screen. Mm-hmm. We decided to leave that off the list.
It's the very first animated DC, right?
Well, the shows were happening first and stuff, and then
it's the first DC animated film.
Yes, correct. But we decided we make that as an honorary number 1. So pretty much we were choosing picks for us that were outside. But yeah, we want to thank Bryce for coming on and helping us decide our favorite DC animated films. I know you're on Comic Talkers with us, which they can all find on Spotify.
It was nice to get an insight from somebody that is very educated with especially with DC Comics. But yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on, man. It gave me a better insight of these movies, and I might have to take a look into some comics in the future, man.
So Bryce,
yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for having me. And Pat, if you ever want any recommendations, I've been reading DC for a long time, so I definitely have my fair share. But yeah, no, thank you guys for having me on. It was a blast.
Well, Bryce, tell the fans also where they can find you
at. So you can find me on Instagram at Hillbilly Comics and on TikTok at Hillbilly Reading Rex. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Not on a whole lot of social media anymore, but yeah, that's where you guys can find me.
Thank you guys again. Thank you, Bryce, for being on. Thank you, B-Dog, as always. And remember, we do it just for flicks.